Okay, look, that's not a
This
ridiculous
is the
thing to
caliber
say.
of player what I'm saying right here is the facts. I am presenting to you the facts of the matter.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Hello and welcome into Eric on the Call, your weekly sports talk and discussion show with your host, Eric Edmondson on 98.7 Roar Radio WPCZ LP FM at the top of the hour. Great show, as always, lined up for you today as we dive into the World Series matchup between MLB's top two teams, the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. An absolute matchup of stars. New York with Judge, Soto, and Cole, and LA with Mookie, Freddie, and of course, Shohei Ohtani. I've seen many online complaints about this series because, for whatever reason, baseball fans hate it when the big market teams exceed. Like I get it. You don't want the big bad ones to go ahead and thrive while your scrappy little team gets kicked into the dust, right? I understand that. But this is also why you spend the money. This is why you spend so much in free agency and why you go and make these big splashy trades. So if you can't make it to the World Series and you blame payroll because of it, please get mad at your owner. Because look, let's take comparison here. The Yankees have a high payroll, the second highest in the MLB. Their owner is worth $3.8 billion. The team that they beat going into the World Series, the Guardians, their owner is worth $4.6 billion. Listen, it's all about what you put into the team, what resources you allocate for your franchise, and this is why you spend the money so you can make the World Series. Listen, either way, as a baseball fan, I am so happy because this is guaranteed to put more eyes on baseball and really prove what I've been saying for years, in that baseball's back. You just have to give it time and attention, and now with the two biggest media markets in the United States, dare I say the world, your ESPNs of the world are given no choice but to showcase this showdown. I'll break down that series later on into the show, but rest assured it is going to be a fun one and one you'll want to tune into on Friday night. The NBA is now in action, and frankly, after a really slow offseason with some big bumps and signings, but nothing too dramatic, we settle in for another 81 and hopefully overcome a symptom that I feel has been growing in the NBA for a while, and that is the lack of excitement. Sure, there is excitement for the new season, but we've seen the same big teams dominate for many years now. It's beginning to get a bit dull with the Celtics in the East, the Nuggets in the West, and in some respect the Bucks as well. We haven't seen too much star power other from those super teams. Well, this year, it feels like we're entering a new age, specifically last playoffs. Names like Anthony Edwards, who became a playoff hero over the summer. Victor Wembanyama, also a star, but not in the playoffs, as he is looking for something to prove after his team lost to the U.S. in the Olympics over the summer. He's looking to continue to be dominant and lead his Spurs through the year. And my final star that I'm watching this year is Jalen Brunson and his Knicks, because I thought this. I called this in the beginning of last season. I thought Brunson was very underrated. I felt he was a superstar in waiting, and there wasn't too much press around him. But as he started to carry his team throughout the year and get them to the playoffs, he began to get some down-ballot MVP votes. He's a great player. He's on a great team. And I'm excited to watch the Knicks this season. They like I said, they should be great. They should be good. A couple more good teams are looking for better off overall playoff performances, such as you got to put OKC in there. They're on the up and up. The playoffs are, of course, many months away, but it is never too early to think about who will be hoisting the trophy. Georgia shocked the nation as they went into Austin and disrespected the number one Texas Longhorns, right? For the real first time in years, UGA has been the underdog in a lot of their fights, or hasn't been the underdog in a lot of their fights, but Kirby Smart does his best work when he's backed into the corner. If you think back to the season where the Dogs repeated against TCU, they looked as though they were the most dominant team in the nation. Heck, one of the most dominant teams of all time. Yet Kirby Smart continued to preach to his team that no one was expecting them to win. Well, Now that Georgia is back into that state of mind, truly, I have 2 words for the SEC. Look out. Looking at Texas, fans might be saying, well, it's just one loss. And you know what? It is. It is just one loss. But with the way that Texas lost in that game, it shows that maybe this run to a title is going to be much harder than anticipated. Listen, Georgia was the first real competition that Texas had to face. Listen, you had a couple of other SEC teams thrown at you as appetizers. But, man, this is big dog time. Georgia's a real deal. Texas has been starting off slow all year long, and they did it again in this game as they couldn't fight back because they fell behind so early in the first half. So, again, a loss is a loss, and it is a loss to a top team, and no matter how much trash you throw on the field, that won't change. Oregon remains undefeated after beating big old meanies and shutting out Purdue. That was just mean, guys. Come on. You didn't have to do that to little old Purdue. Another game I was keeping my eye on was Alabama and Tennessee. The Vols were untested a good bit of the year, and I circled this game for them about a month ago and said that this could be their biggest test yet. And I'm not sure if they passed as much as Alabama is just struggling to really find themselves this year. But a win's a win. A win is a win. And listen, I can understand that this is the first season under Kellen DeBoer, but the way that this team has played for Alabama has been very upsetting. They have tremendously played down to competition, and you can see that in not only the loss to Vandy, now the loss to Tennessee, but you also saw those cracks against South Carolina and South Florida, specifically in the first half of that South Florida game. Jalen Milroe has looked anywhere from a Heisman to a third-round pick in some instances. And the word I bring up again with Alabama that I've said over and over and over again is identity. They have to figure themselves out. We have more college football talk coming up, but first, our first music break. And I know I can be a bit sporadic with my music picks. I know this. So this week I made a conceited effort. I made an effort to get an actual theme, and we're doing old school R&B, which I'm a huge fan of. And because of that appreciation of the classics, it has earned me Unk status from folks around campus. Listen, you want to call me Unk 4, that's fine. It's great music. So starting us off today is Al Green with Bell off the Bell album. Green's 12th studio album, and the first one made without his longtime producer, Willie Mitchell. This one has much more of an identity and an oomph for Green. Some of his other albums were mostly just some vocals and a lot of instrumentals. So, without too much more delay, here is Bell by Al Green on 98.7 Roar Radio, the student voice of Piedmont University. Welcome back into Eric on the Call on 98.7 Roar Radio with your host, Eric Evanson, getting ready to run down the big games of last week in college football. As we did with last week, let's go over the top 10 in the AP poll right now. Oregon, UGA, Oregon undefeated, UGA, Penn State, Ohio, Texas, Miami, Tennessee, LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State. Alabama drops all the way down to number 15 after not only a loss to Tennessee, but of course the loss to Vanderbilt just a couple weeks ago, and they just have not, like I've said, they have not looked good so far under Kellen DeBoer. Not only is it just, a new coach, a new system. Again, Bama fans, you shouldn't be panicked. You should not be panicked about this just yet. It is a first year, and parting with the GOAT, the greatest college coach of all time, just leaving him for him to go into retirement and leaving to go to a new coach. It's a big step off. It's a big cliff. So I wouldn't be too worried. However, this play has not been inspiring at all. Talking about the game in general, multiple opportunities were wasted in the first half for Alabama, and they had a lot more of an opportunity to put down Tennessee before you went into halftime, even with, and especially with Tennessee's QB getting injured. You entered halftime just up by 7. You cannot do that. I mentioned the undisciplined actions of Bama rearing their head again and again. They continue to be undisciplined. That carries them to a spot where even in the late half of the Saban regime, it was lacking pretty heavily for the Tide. You're giving up penalties, you're giving up yardage, and then ultimately you're going to continue to give up games. This Alabama team could be a lot more dominant or just better in general if they just made it a little more of an effort to be a little bit more disciplined. 15 penalties in Neyland against Tennessee. in the past 2 seasons, totaling 100-plus yards. And remember, they lost to Tennessee pretty recently again, too. So maybe they need to, give Dixieland delight back. It's not a Tennessee Saturday night. It's not a sweet Tennessee Saturday night for Alabama, or at least it hasn't been this season. In the second half, the Alabama defense yielded to Tennessee running back Dylan Simpson as he just ran all over, and they had the quarterback, they had the pass rush really well documented. They had it overall scouted. He only had a few big throws in the game for Tennessee, but again, they could not stop the run game at all. You don't like to give up 24, but the offense has to come through for Alabama. This was an experienced O-line coming into the season, giving you multiple creative avenues to go with, whether if you want to go with a run game. They had a couple of running backs that they were excited about coming into the season off of preseason. And, of course, you had Jalen Milroe coming back. Jalen Milroe threw the ball 45 times. That is not it. You cannot have Jalen Milroe do that, especially because you become a one dynamic offense. You have no other options. The run game for Bama has been absolutely abysmal. Listen, this is still, even with 2 losses, with the expanded playoffs, it's still a playoff team, but it's one that I think is going to stumble into that position. But listen, they have a lot of talent on this roster, and I think ultimately talent's going to win out for Alabama. Oregon kept the undefeated streak alive as they move up to 7-0 on the year, and you know what? Maybe they'll be getting more respect. They should be getting more respect from me, honestly. I don't think this has been a secret. This has been a pretty SEC-biased show because it is a higher standard of competition. I don't really care what anyone else says. SEC is just a lot tougher conference to play in. It just very much is. But with the breaking down of those conference walls, we can now see, and especially with NIL, with different players going to different places for the sake of money, you can see now that a lot of talent is not leaving the SEC, but going to different places. So you need to look a little bit broader. And the Ducks are a real player here. They're really dang good. The offense might not be highlight, but the defense is enough to stop anybody in the FBS. They are really stunning, and they showed that in the past 7 weeks where they have just rolled over the competition. Not necessarily rolled over in the case of Ohio State. Ohio State gave them a good fight, but they still beat them. The best team that they have faced off again is Ohio State. And with some different falls and better coaching on the Buckeyes' part, I think that Ohio State can take that one away. And Ryan Day has not been great for the Buckeyes. So maybe with some different falls for the Ducks, they don't come away with that one because it was close. But everybody else, they haven't necessarily had a difficult road to get there. And that's why I haven't necessarily talked about them as highly, is because they haven't played anyone that's going to really stand up to me and make me open my eyes. But what really matters for the Ducks is that they are number 1, and everyone else is trying to get them in the power rankings if you're worried about power rankings. But they are number 1 overall. The road ahead is going to be really easy for them. You got Illinois, ranked number 20 at home. Then a shell of the former Michigan, even though it is in the big house. That should be a pretty easy game for Michigan. I wouldn't be too for Oregon. I wouldn't be too worried about that. So, next we're going to talk about the Bulldogs and the Longhorns, and I'm going to bring in a special guest for that. It's going to be Mr. Hank Tatum. Hank, it's great to have you on. It's been a minute since we talked last, and I believe last time we spoke it was going to be going into the Alabama game, yeah. Going into the Alabama game, obviously that Alabama game didn't go Georgia's way. They didn't play at their best. They were a little bit down at the time, but they went into Austin also down in terms of injuries. And despite some, you call it poor quarterback play from Carson Beck, Trevor Etienne came up big. He ran all over the Longhorns, Hank.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge win. I think that Alabama game, it looked like it was the beginning of a trend that maybe this defense just wasn't as good as we kind of expected preseason. But now you look back on that, it almost feels like more of an anomaly. And said it after the Alabama game, but that second half Georgia team in that game is probably as good as anybody in the country. And finally, it seemed like Georgia was able to put it together more consistently in Austin. Like you mentioned, the offense just didn't play great by any standards there. Carson Beck struggled, but he didn't really get a lot of help from his receivers, lots of drop passes. But overall, that defense is what really impressed me. Felt like 2021 all over again, where took a number one offense in the country and held them to 15 points. And one of those came off of a interception that was the overturned penalty. So overall, the defense was fantastic, kind of led by Jalen Walker and Dalen Everett there in the secondary. They were all over the field at all times in that game.
Oh, absolutely. I think the defense was the key here. Defense is what won Georgia that game, like you said, Hank. Looking at the outlook for where we stand right now with the SEC, obviously, it's been a dogfight for every single team involved so far. Georgia obviously still big contenders, as well as Texas. Who are you seeing come out of the SEC as champion?
I think right now I'm going to have to roll with the odds-on favorite, Georgia, just because I think we've seen it from them a little bit more. Yes, they struggled heavily in that first half against Alabama, but college football, especially in a conference as good as the SEC, isn't always about who plays the best throughout the entire season. It's really who gets hot and who hits their stride at the right time. And I think that we're going to see Georgia come out of this bye week and really hit that stride. You're going to get Tate Ratledge back on the offensive line soon. Smile Mondon, a linebacker, will come back as well. So the team will not only get healthy, but I think that after what we saw in Austin, this team can really kind of hit its stride. And ultimately, I think you have to trust the best coach in the country at this point. When you put Kirby Smart up against anyone else, I think that if they're equally matched, you kind of have to give that edge to Kirby Smart. So I like Georgia to come out of the conference, but it could really go a number of ways. Obviously, Texas is still in the mix. We could see them in Atlanta again, maybe against Georgia, maybe against somebody else. But A&M and LSU currently lead this conference, both undefeated. They play this week. They have something to say about it. So there's a lot of teams still in the mix. Even Tennessee is there. So a lot is going to happen over the next 5-6 weeks. And it could be a number of different teams. But I'll tell you this, it won't just be two that are limited to the college football playoff. We will also see teams that don't make it to Atlanta that find themselves maybe hosting a college football playoff game come that time in late December.
And you kind of set me up perfectly for the next question for you, Hank. In the expanded playoffs this year, obviously you cover Georgia a lot, but aficionado in all college football, there's a lot more games to be played before you get to that national championship game. Are there any teams you're looking at right now that maybe aren't built for that?
I don't know exactly if they're teams that aren't built for it, but certainly I think that with the 12-team playoff, there will not be 12 teams that are capable of winning a national title. And it's hard to tell you exactly who that is right now. I think that currently there's a group of teams that have separated themselves, and that is Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State. I think that all four of them are firmly in the mix. But Penn State will have something to say about it. Clemson's a very good team, Miami, even some other SEC teams. But kind of like you're saying, there will be 12 teams in the playoff. I don't believe that all 12 of them will be capable of winning a national title. I think that group is more of 4 or 5 teams.
Okay, absolutely. I like that point of view. Well, Hank, it's always awesome to have you on the show. Hopefully I have you on later on, and maybe even in January as the Bulldogs look for another chance at the trophy. Thank you, Hank.
Yep, thank you, Eric.
Again, that was Hank Tatum for Dogs Central. Go check him out. Does some great work over there. He actually flew to Austin to attend that game. He'll be heading to Jacksonville next week as he rests up with the bye week, along with the rest of the Georgia Bulldogs. And look, he made some solid points. Maybe we're sleeping on a couple more teams. I mentioned earlier on in this show, in this show's history, that I'm an LSU enjoyer. And look, I've more or less tuned out LSU this year, but they are chugging along. They're playing the games that they need to play, and they're winning games that they need to win. And that's a good part into the fact that the offense has been steady. They lost a lot of running backs, and they lost a lot of offensive weapons at the beginning of the season with some multiple torn ACLs and just some silliness that happened with the injury bug. But they have kept on chugging. Garrett Nussheimer has been a very steady hand behind center. And overall, LSU, I'm not sure if they're a huge player for a national championship, because I just don't know if they have the talent to do that at the moment. But a playoff spot is not out of the question at all. And like Hank said, they might be playing in Atlanta. But, right now, Georgia is going to come out of that game with a huge bump of momentum. they're going to run into Florida, and oh my goodness, can we pray for Florida? It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for them. I'm surprised Billy Napier still has his job. I genuinely don't know how, but either way, he still has it, and they'll face off against Georgia coming out of the bye week. And I do want to touch on something else. Kirby Smart was in a position where he was backed against the wall, and that's where we've seen Kirby do his best work. He completely outmatched Steve Sarkisian, and I think there's going to be a conversation had between Sarkisian as well as his two quarterbacks, because he completely gave up on Quinn Ewers, who is not only the senior, but he's looking to go for a high draft this year. So you're hurting. I get you want to win the game, but you're hurting a kid's future, and you're also hurting yourself in that game, not letting the steady hand that's guided your team to some impressive wins go. Instead, you flip to the rookie, or not the rookie, but Arch, and Arch didn't look great either. You got to give these guys reps. So I'm not sure what I know what the idea was there for Sarkisian, but I don't understand it, I think would be the better way to talk about that. Again, Bulldogs have an easy few weeks ahead of them with the bye week this week, and then the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, goodness gracious, the week after that. Give you some games to watch here coming out of our CFB block. Nebraska will be at Ohio State. Notre Dame, ranked number 12 somehow, will be at a ranked and undefeated Navy. Yes, that's right, Navy and Army for the first time in goodness gracious how many years. They're both not only ranked, but they're undefeated. Oregon will be at Illinois. Mizzou will be at Bama. And Texas will face the Juggernaut Vanderbilt. The World Series has finally arrived, and it is one of those that the MLB has hoped and prayed for 10 years. I'm being dead serious, too. Ever since this current opening of the window for both the Yankees and the Dodgers has happened, the MLB has prayed that one day both of their darlings get to compete at the biggest stage of them all. Bonus points for the MLB is that Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani are going to be playing as well, as, of course, they are the darlings of the MLB also. Now, while the MLB is happy, many fans are not. In baseball, mostly because of the movie Moneyball and partially because of the Yankees' late 90s dynasty, it is seen as bad when a team spends money to get to the biggest stage there is. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is good for the game. The two biggest markets will face off in a juggernaut matchup. How can you not love this? I'll break down storylines and game days when we come back from our next break, starring one of my favorites, my personal favorites, Otis Redding. We'll be looking at the Soul album released in 1966, Redding's fourth studio album, which showed him really honing his strengths in the studio and his strengths of R&B. It features a lot of heavy woodwinds, guitars, and moody beats all throughout. He collaborated with not only the great Smokey Robinson on this album, but Sam Cooke as well. So, here is Nobody Knows You by Otis Redding on 98.7 Roar Radio, the student voice of Piedmont University. Welcome back into Eric on the Call. Eric Edmondson, your host here with you, getting ready to break down the 2024 MLB World Series. These are the two largest payrolls in the sport. They are. Both have overcome demons to get here. The Yankees, the boogeyman for them for many years has been the Houston Astros. And the Astros were taken down to the first round by the surprise Tigers that shouldn't have been in the playoffs anyway. But Houston taken down, so Yankees' path to the World Series is pretty clear. And I said it last week. If you're saying the Yankees had an easy march to the World Series, well, yeah, that's why you win the regular season games that you do to put yourself in that position. See, seeding matters a little bit still with the expanded playoffs. Not a lot, but a little bit. And the Guardians just didn't have the talent to overcome what New York had. So that's the demon side for the Yankees. For the Dodgers, I don't know if you can call it really demons. I mean, the Dodgers have had such a long playoff window open for them that you are expecting a decent run for them a lot of the time. But the problem is usually they make it to the NLCS or they flame out, or they make it to the World Series and they lose. Apart from 2020, which is what they're trying to rectify here. I think that's the biggest demon for the Dodgers, is that they need to give this city a championship. And they already got them a ring during the 2020 World Series, but the people need to see it. They need to have a parade. That's what they want, right? And I won't say that I'm, rooting for one or the other. I'm rooting for Game 7. That's what I want to see. But you cannot say that this is going to be an unexciting World Series or it's going to be boring, because baseball fans in general, you love to kick the Titans when they're down. You love to make fun of the Yankees and the Dodgers when they're first-round exits, or in the Yankees' case, when they don't make the playoffs. But you hate to see them get back up, and they're back up. They are standing tall right now. So let's break down the two teams. Excuse me. So for the Dodgers, they proved me wrong. I did not like their pitching going into October baseball. I really didn't. Jack Flaherty and Yamamoto have really stepped up in that role. Jack Flaherty, of course, pitched really well in the first game versus the Mets. Had a bit of a blow-up later on in that series, but he pitched very well against the Padres as well. Yamamoto, I was iffy on coming in because he was finding a lot of barrels towards the end of the regular season, and he's had an up-and-down year overall adjusting to the new league, which I figured was going to happen. I didn't think he was going to come over and dominate. But he has a lot of the stuff, a lot of power pitching stuff to really shorten the game and get it to the bullpen, because he has that fastball and he has the good splitter. And power pitching is exactly what carries you in October. The ability to get strikeouts is exactly what carries you, because the more fluky and ticky-tacky hits you let just kind of spray onto the grass or spray onto the dirt, it's going to come back and bite you eventually. That's why you see so many big home runs at big spots in the playoffs. Not because it's rigged. It's just because the law of averages is going to even out. Walker Buehler's been pretty good after starting off with a rough postseason, but he's settled in pretty well. He's been very gritty. He's been able to find his way through, and I'm trusting the ball with him. Not like maybe a Jack Flaherty trust, but I am going to trust the ball with him. And the lineup, my goodness, the lineup has been dodgering, right? One thing about the Dodgers that I always think about whenever I see them play is they don't swing at bad pitches. They don't. If they're going to get beat, they're going to get beat with pitches in the strike zone, and that's exactly what you have to do to beat this squad. They are a very disciplined team at the plate, and it helps when you have Betts, Ohtani, and Freeman up at the top. But maybe Freeman's not available. He's still dealing with that ankle. Maybe this couple-day layoff will, help him recoup it a little bit. But then you have Tommy Edman up there? Oh, no. Not Cardinals Devil Magic. Cardinals Devil Magic made it to the Dodgers? Yeah, the league's done, and he proved it, winning NLCS MVP. Tommy Edman is one of those players that is very hot, very streaky. He doesn't necessarily have a lot of power, but he can run into a ball, and that's exactly what the Dodgers try to bring out of players. They try to bring out that launch angle, that barrel percentage. That's exactly what they do. And with Betts and Ohtani, man, that's a dangerous top two to get through. Muncy can also be there. He can also help you out. He's very hot and cold. Kike Hernandez is also there for fun. Kike is very, very good in the playoffs. I'm pretty pessimistic on him here in this World Series, because I just don't think Kike as a player is fine. He's fine coming off the bench to play an infield position for you, heck, even an outfield position in a pinch. But the problem with Kike Hernandez is that his bat is not great. He does not have a great bat. I think he rode that playoff run from 2021 with the Boston Red Sox for a very long time, until Boston decided to cut bait with the contract. But he's still good in the postseason. Sometimes you can't explain that. The bullpen has been great for the Dodgers as well. A bullpen that doesn't necessarily have the big names that you might have remembered, but it's been very solid. Michael Kopech has been a great add. They found fire with that one. Michael Kopech has been very, very good. I mentioned going into the playoffs on our playoff preview show, Kopech would be an interesting starter option, and he has started before, and he has also closed out back-end games. And also waiting for you in the back end is Blake Trinan, who's been very, very, very tough. Trinan, of course, wicked slider, good fastball, and again, power pitching like that is what leads you through October. Alex Vesia has some good middle relief stuff. I'm not as confident in Alex Vesia as maybe I should be, but he's a decent lefty for you to throw out there. Brussadar Gratterall has some control issues, but he throws really, really hard, which helps. And Evan Phillips has been one of the most dangerous relievers, one of the most underrated dangerous relievers in all of baseball. And I say that because I don't think he hasn't necessarily been given the closer role, so he gets overlooked a lot. But he really is dangerous. He's a bad guy you want to mess with, because once he gets into that middle reliever role, he can really shorten the game, and I want to emphasize that. It's all about shortening the game in October. Can your starter go 5 innings? Great. Is your bullpen ready to go? unload it. That's how you win October baseball. For the Yankees, Aaron Judge has overcome the October demons. He had a pretty bad playoff record coming into the ALDS, and he was still pretty poor in the ALDS, but he played pretty well in the ALCS. He was seeing the ball a little bit better. Of course, we know Judge is going to take his walk sometimes, and much like the Dodgers, you're going to have to beat him in the zone if you want to beat him. That high fastball is how you get Aaron Judge. You can't put it in the wheelhouse. But Judge is still a very, very talented bat, and behind Ohtani this season, I would say, he was the second best hitter. I mean, you can really flip a coin with both of them. I would take Shohei more than Aaron Judge right now because Shohei is simply a lefty, and you're going to get a little bit more righty pitching. But anyway, that's just a non sequitur of a conversation to have. Juan Soto has never had any October demons. He's performed at every stage in the playoffs in his career. Of course, remember that magical run in 2019, the big wild card game hit, the big bat drop in the World Series versus the Astros. Juan Soto is a demon. Same with Giancarlo Stanton. Where did Giancarlo Stanton come from? He's had a decent year in the regular season, and man, he has woken up in the playoffs. He won the ALCS MVP. I think he would have won the ALDS MVP as well versus the Royals. But man, he has been absurd. The rest of the lineup can be productive, but can go cold, as we've seen it before. Same as the Dodgers. You pay your big horses to be consistent, and then you hope to tack on as many role players as you can. And that's exactly what the Dodgers and the Yankees have right now. But I do think that the Yankees role players are a little bit better than what the Dodgers have. Look, you have Verdugo back there. You have Gleyber Torres, who I believe in a lot more than your Max Muncies or your Miguel Rojas's, right? I'm really banking this series for the Yankees too, and it might just because I'm very biased because I love the guy, but I want to see a big Jazz Chisholm series. Man, Jazz Chisholm has talked about and has flashed his talent all across his career. This is the biggest stage, man. It's time to show out, and I think he does have that in him. He's got a sweet lefty swing, and once he gets on a heater, he can be good. Again, I mentioned Gleyber Torres was a little bit unsung. Gleyber was very, very good last year, but this year he's been very solid as well. And frankly, I like the Yankees pitching way more than I like the Dodgers pitching. Garrett Cole has turned it on. Luis Gil was great to start the year, and now he's back into the rotation after an injury. Carlos Rodon has been destructive. He's fantastic. He's a one. Yankees fans were ready to rip him apart after last season where he was plagued with injury. I'm not sure why they didn't give him a better chance at that. But now, this year, he's back. He's better. Doesn't have injury. And, man, he is looking like that dominant lefty ace that they paid a lot of money for. The Yankee bullpen has scarcely had a year where they've been bad, and we're continuing it this year. It's another good bullpen. Tim Hill, Luke Weaver in the ninth inning for your closer after he usurped the role from Clay Holmes, who I think Clay Holmes is still good, but I think taking him out of that closer role is better. We saw Mark Leiter Jr. have a pretty good ALCS. Clark Schmidt can also start, but I do like him in that bullpen. I like him in the swing role. October, you can get creative with your fifth guys in the rotation. I think that's what Clark Schmidt can be. I think this World Series has the biggest potential to be one of the best we've ever seen. I'm talking to go up there with 2001, of course, Diamondbacks versus the Yankees. Then you have 2011. We'll see you tomorrow night, and 2016. I think this World Series has the sauce and the build-up to really go that distance. But as a baseball fan, I'm rooting for Game 7. I'm rooting for that. That's the most I want out of this series. I want more baseball. That being said, with the expectations, both of these teams have had extensive track records of being disappointing, right? The bigger market you're in, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And that goes for both of these teams. Again, you're in two of the biggest markets in the world. Yankees have made the World Series for the first time in a decade plus. Last year they missed the playoffs. They're back in the World Series, and a win in this series could very well secure another cornerstone for their franchise, another cornerstone in that lineup. Juan Soto. I mean, look, if you win off the World Series, you get a little drunk off of that win, heck, you might want to spend a little money, and Juan Soto is going to want a little bit of money, right? The Dodgers, I mentioned, are looking for redemption. They've been hit by the bug a little bit too much in the World Series. I know 2017 is still very sour in their mouths because of the Astros and that tainted season, but mostly they're looking for redemption for 2020. You got there, but you weren't in front of fans. You weren't even in your stadium. So The Dodgers don't want to hear any more Mickey Mouse jokes. They're not going to Disneyland. They're not going to Disney World. They don't want to hear it. They want a parade. The more and more I talk about this series, the more and more I get hyped up for it. It's going to be a blast. But I think it's time for a prediction. I don't like predicting sports because they're really, really random. And I don't think you can ever be 100% confident in something's going to happen. But give me Yankees in 7. I want 7 games. I want more baseball. I got a couple eye rolls after I said that, but the Yankees pitching, I've said it before, I'm a big believer in October power pitching, and I think that's exactly what the Yankees have. I don't think the Dodgers have the pitching fortitude to contend right now with New York. A classic is hopefully awaiting on the horizon, and one that not only the nation will have their eyes on, but the whole world as well. Japan. I just saw this headline before coming in. The One Piece season finale got postponed in Japan because they're going to air the World Series instead on cable. That's huge. That is massive in Japan. So, again, Yankees in 7, give it to me. The key thing also here is how annoying the MLB is going to be with their social media posts because, guys, we have to accept it. Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani's hitting a home run in this series. It's going to happen. Prepare for the worst, and Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani are going to win a ring. There's going to be favoritism, all right? Just if you need to mute your social media, go ahead and do it because MLB is ready for the field day. Next up, it's time to talk about some hoops. Ah, yes, the air is getting much colder. It's not even crisp. It's cold now, which means it's time to head inside for some basketball. The season has already started, but it's not too early for myself and my good friend Grant Prather to talk about some expectations for the season. NBA talk on your station up next as we have some more music to guide your way through there. Keeping up with this theme, another R&B classic. Miss Etta James recorded I'd Rather Go Blind in 1967, and it became an instant R&B classic and has since found its way into the culture of the genre. James herself, a legend, has been portrayed by titans of the industry as she was played by Beyoncé in the 2008 film Cadillac Records. Speaking on I'd Rather Go Blind, the track has received many a cover and rendition through the years. Artists such as the Allman Brothers, a Georgia and Macon native band, Fleetwood Mac, and Joe Bonamassa, and an Eric on the Call favorite, Liam Bailey. The song found some more popularity when Chris Stapleton released Tennessee Whiskey, which uses the same chords and melodies that James did to tell a different story. So, without further delay, here is I'd Rather Go Blind on 98.7 Roar Radio, the student voice of Piedmont University. Welcome back into Eric on the Call. It's time to talk about NBA. And alongside me is Grant Prather. Grant, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, now that the season started, even better.
I know, right? You've been itching for this one. I know you have. You've been switching for it. You've been talking about it for 3 weeks now.
Something like that. It's been a long wait in the making.
It definitely has. The new season is already underway, and we're getting ready to talk about it. Grant, I mentioned to you we're going to talk about some specific teams that I think are going to have some of the biggest storylines this year. Obviously, let's start off with the Nuggets. They had a tough loss in the playoffs last year, but they're looking for a big bounce back.
They've been a winning team since Jokic came on, right? And they're going to continue it. There's no question about that. You still have Jamal Murray. You still have Jokic. And the addition of Russell Westbrook on the bench is so interesting to me. I think he works really well as a sixth man now that he's late in his career. And Jokic, I'm expecting another at least MVP caliber season out of him.
Absolutely. I mean, look, Jokic is he's a man possessed when he's on the court, right? And we saw how he acted in the playoffs. That's not going to sit well with him, even if he went off and was able to be with his horses. I mean, it's not going to sit well with him. I agree. I really like Westbrook as sixth man. I'm not sure if I don't know if Father Time is going to catch up to him or not because that's always a factor. But again, Westbrook as sixth man, you can do worse.
Right, and he, like you said, Father Time might catch up to him because his 2016-2015 highlight tape is one of the greatest tapes I've ever seen from an NBA player, realistically, and he still has a lot left in the tank. We've still seen a lot of highlight-level dunks. He had one insane dunk with the Lakers, I think it was 2 years ago now. So as the season pans out, it's going to be interesting to see how he will play.
All right, let's move to the team that knocked out the Nuggets, another big storyline, and I think a guy who has the possibility to become the new face of the NBA, Anthony Edwards. He's got a lot of stuff to work on, him and his Timberwolves, but This team is interesting. I think it's a little overhyped coming into this year. Let's be a little realistic. But we saw what they can do in the summer.
Yeah, and Edwards is probably one or two steps away from already being the face of the league. I think in a lot of people's minds, he's already their favorite player. He's become their favorite player. And like you said, some new additions, maybe overrated. Julius Randle is weird on this team, to say the least.
Yeah, I like the trade on paper. I do. But it's such a strange fit because, I mean, Cat was so good for Minnesota. But I think getting Randall off of the Knicks opens up a little bit of opportunity for him. It's just about how his personality is going to gel and how he wants to play on the court.
And it does work for their big man scheme at least, because now Gobert can truly play center. He doesn't have to worry about any of their big man rebounding duties. He can really do what he does best. But Randall and Edwards is an interesting mix because that's the thing with a lot of NBA teams nowadays, right? They go for the star names. They don't exactly go for scheme fits on trade. So it's an interesting move. Like you said, on paper, it looks good, but scheme-wise, maybe not so much.
Absolutely. And Grant, you're much more knowledgeable about NBA than I am. Where do you see the Wolves ending up this year?
I don't think they will make the top two at least. They'll probably be a 3 or a 4 seed. I would say probably 52-30 is a good estimation for their record because they're going to have those speed bumps with Randall. We've seen Randall in the past have really spotty games where he can't shoot very well. Same thing with Cam Thomas like we saw last night in the Hawks game. We'll get to that. But 52-30 for sure.
All right, I like that one. So next team we're going to talk about are the 76ers. The 76ers they always talk big expectations coming into every single year, but it's health for them. It's just straight up health.
And regular seasons have been flawless for the Sixers, right? But as soon as they get in the playoffs, it's just like a flip switches and everything collapses. And a lot of that is due to Joel Embiid. He even said for the regular season to, I guess, preserve from injury or keep him less fatigued, he wasn't going to play back-to-back games. And Paul George still hurt for them. Paul George, I like that on the Sixers. I do. I think he's a much-needed guard to pair with Tyrese Maxey. I like Tyrese Maxey a lot. Sixers, very similar record to the Wolves, I think. They'll be around the low 50 range, maybe 50 wins. So
I like that. I agree with that. And again, I'm not super high on the Sixers. It is really how far Embiid is able to take them. But regardless, I do like the move to bring in Paul George for Philadelphia. So next squad we're going to talk about. Let's talk about the Lakers. The Lakers. I think the big storyline for them was the fact that they were going to come in with Bronny. Bronny James was going to come into the fold. But I think the biggest storyline that people don't talk about is JJ Redick's the head coach now.
Yeah, it's bad. It's worked in the first game at least. I think he's able to build a much stronger relationship with the players than past Lakers coaches have had. And one thing to mention about the Lakers definitely is the fact that Anthony Davis is, in my opinion, going to average more than LeBron in points because I think LeBron's role has somewhat diminished and Anthony Davis is really coming into his own finally. He's staying healthy, so that helps.
I mean, AD, the big question for him is he going to stay healthy? I think the Lakers have a good squad, but the problem with them is that the Nuggets are always in their way.
Yeah, Nuggets, I think they've been the 1 seed the past 2 years. I want to say that's correct. I could be wrong. Like you said, I'm kind of knowledgeable, but I don't know everything. But Lakers going to be just barely above 500 by a couple of games, maybe mid-40s, high 40s win rate. So
let's talk about the Spurs. Like I said, I'm very high on Victor Wembanyama. I really like Wemby. You're a little bit less high on the Spurs, I'd say, and I do agree with that. I am a little bit up in the clouds on their outlook, but I think Wembanyama is going to have maybe even an MVP caliber year.
And from a lot of people's perspectives, he had close to an MVP caliber year, just not based off stats, but how he played, right? And the addition of Chris Paul, some of you may have seen that clip of Paul throwing a perfect alley-oop to Wembanyama. That's one of the most lethal combinations in the league right now. You have a 7'4" mobile center with one of the best passing point guards of all time. The issue with the Spurs is depth. That was a lot of the reason why they didn't do very good last year. They were, I think, bottom 4 in the league last year. But having Chris Paul is going to help. They'll be right around 500, maybe a game or two above.
I like that. Let's move on to the Hawks just so we can keep some local interest. And Grant, you're pretty optimistic on the Hawks. I am convinced that they're going to lose every game for the rest of the season.
1-81. Yeah, I guess
exactly.
It would be the realistic prediction. But the chemistry of this team is a lot better, I think, than it was last year. I like Dyson Daniels. I like Zach. I'm just going to call him Zach because I don't want to say his last name every time. It's too complicated. But I think the team is a bit better than it was last year. Defense is still an issue. It was good to see when they played against the Nets, out rebounding. They did a great job in the paint. Okongwu had 28 points. Okongwu has always been there for the Hawks. I think he's going to be a crucial piece in the team this year because Capella, we know he'll get injured a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was hurt last night too. But Hawks 35-43 roughly. They're going to be under 500 again. Very similar performance to last year.
Yeah, I think maybe you can see them do a little bit better, but a lot of this hinges on how good is ZR going to be. Because for years, I have been pounding the table for the Hawks front office to go out, go get a giant, go get a big man for Trey. Because when Trey is very one dynamic, he's shifted, he's done a good job to build up his defense. I'll give him that. But he's a shooter, and when he doesn't have anybody to find, there's no way to not only find a way into the paint, but you can't defend. And like you said, they did good on rebounds last night, but it's the Nets.
Yeah, exactly. The Nets aren't that good. Cam Thomas even dropped 36 on the Hawks. Zach dropped 7 points in 19 minutes, so not perfect by a lot of standards, but Okongwu and Trey really picked up the scoring. Trey's defense has improved, like you said. Obviously, he lacks in the physical, true one-on-one defense. He kind of relies more on pokeouts and those type of steals, but his defense has definitely improved.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's for the local interest for the Hawks. Let's talk about the defending champion, the Boston Celtics. Grant, they got a super team there, and there's not a lot you can do about it.
And not much has changed either. It's pretty much the same recipe as it was last year. Just feed Tatum and feed Jaylen Brown and just hope for the best. And it's worked. Jaylen Brown actually kind of worked on his left hand for once, and Tatum performed really well, 25 points in their season opener against the Knicks. So look for probably another one-seed finish.
Yeah, and I do think this season might be a little bit tougher for them in the East. It really depends on they're making the playoffs, right? So it depends on who they're going to face off with in the playoffs for them. And I don't know if there's any heavyweights that can really spar with them. It's going to take a bad game from Jaylen Brown. Tatum's a stud, but Tatum is not that team.
Yeah, the East is very top-heavy. They have maybe 4 or 5 good teams. I think the Cavs are the low end and the Celtics are the top end. Cavs, Knicks, Sixers, Celtics are really the only ones in that mix. So as opposed to the West, there's not too much competition in the East realistically.
Absolutely. Well, Grant Prather, everybody, it's a pleasure to have you on, my friend. Well, I'm sure we'll have you on again now the NBA season is kicked off. And we are almost out of time here this afternoon, but we will get you out of here right after some news and notes and one final break from the genius, Ray Charles. Charles is one of the most influential musicians of all time, touching the genres of soul, jazz, blues, and early rock, and more. Billy Joel once called Ray Charles more important than the King Elvis Presley. So with our last bit of music here this afternoon, here is Ray Charles with I Believe to My Soul on 98.7 Roar Radio, the student voice of Piedmont University. Welcome back into Eric on the Call. Eric Edmondson, your host, here with you, getting ready to send you out for the weekend. Starting off with some news and notes. Former MLB pitcher Fernando Valenzuela unfortunately passed away at the age of 63. Valenzuela, a very integral pitcher for Mexican pitchers for the MLB. The great lefty was phenomenal. Fernando Mania swept the nation as the rookie carried a .50 ERA through 8 starts to start off his career. Ohtani's 50 home run, 50 stolen base ball sold for $4.3 million. Man, I see why Zach Campbell does it, even if Zach Campbell is a little bit of a dork. I get it. Moving into the NFL, Brandon Ayuk is out for the season after an ACL and an MCL tear. So the 49ers continue to get less and less powerful as the time goes along. This might just be a lost season for them. They've had so many injuries. The most healthy 49ers wide receiver was involved in a shooting just about a month ago. So it's been rough sailing for San Francisco. Andy Dalton is set to take the bench as Bryce Young is set to return after Andy Dalton was hurt in a car accident, hurt his thumb in a car accident recently. So Bryce Young comes back. He'll face off against the Denver Broncos. Tua Tagovailoa is also set to return, even though he is not going to wear a Guardian cap. It's a personal choice for Tua, but I really do hope for his family's sake and his own sake. He's a little bit safer out there. It's not good to watch Tua go out there and put his real life on the line in these situations, especially with how scary those injuries have been. And then Deshaun Watson's Achilles tear happened, and there was a lot of support from the players. In fact, some called him an upstanding member of society. No. Deshaun Watson, you don't want to root for anyone's injury. You don't want to root for anyone's downfall. However, Watson's injury comes amid a flurry of sexual assault allegations, as he will now be forced to sit on the sideline. So Deshaun Watson out with a torn Achilles, and Jameis Winston up in his place. The New York Liberty won the franchise's first WNBA title after 28 years and being a founding member of the WNBA. Brianna Stewart and Serena Ionescu had a fantastic Game 5 against the Lynx, and really just looking forward to what they do next season. But New York Liberty champions finally. The second round of the MLS playoffs are set to begin tomorrow with a showdown between the Atlanta United and Inter Miami. So they will face off with Messi. Hopefully Messi gives us some more star power, as he, usually has. But this is going to be a big matchup as the playoffs will continue throughout the weekend. Kennesaw State previously was 0-6. They defeated previously undefeated Liberty University 27-24 to win the first FBS game in program history. Again, KSU was 0-6 before that after joining the FBS this season. Give you some games to watch as well in the NFL. Philadelphia will be at Cincinnati. That'll be a fun offensive game to watch. Hopefully, Joe Burrow gets some help. On Thursday Night Football this evening, it'll be the Vikings and the Rams. It's the only game on. Might as well just give it a look. Then Atlanta will be at Tampa Bay, as Atlanta looks to rebound after a tough loss to the Seattle Seahawks. And Tampa Bay looks to rebound after tough losses to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Chicago will be at Washington. Man, I really circled this one because I was really looking forward to Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels showing off and showdown. But unfortunately, Daniels will be out with a rib injury, so it will be Caleb Williams versus the Commanders all by his lonesome, it seems like, with no quarterback to spar with him. In the CFB, I mentioned earlier this show, Nebraska will be at Ohio State. Notre Dame will be at ranked and undefeated Navy. Oregon will be at number 20 ranked Illinois. Mizzou will be at number 15 ranked Alabama. And Texas will be at Vandy, previously Texas ranked number 1. In the NBA, a couple of games to look out for this weekend that are of note. Oklahoma City will be in Denver, facing off against the Nuggets, and the San Antonio Spurs will face off against the Dallas Mavericks. In the MLS, I mentioned that Atlanta United and Inter Miami get started. That'll be tomorrow. And there will be action all throughout the weekend on the 26th and the 27th. And, hey, the first round of the MLS playoffs is free on Apple TV. So if you do have that, go check that out. And I believe Apple TV is free with a subscription. There's some sort of loophole that Apple does that allows you to have it for free. I'm not certain what it is, but it's out there. In the MLB World Series, games 1 and 2 are in LA. They start at 8:08 Eastern Standard Time, Friday and Saturday. It'll be the Yankees and the Dodgers. Again, a big showdown matchup that I am very, very excited to watch. Well, I think it's time I start finding my way out of this booth. It has been a very fun afternoon. Thanks for tuning in to Eric on the Call. If you want to keep up with myself, I suggest TikTok and Twitter and X. You can find me by looking up just my name, Eric Edmondson. You can also find episodes on YouTube. Just, again, look up my name with Eric on the Call, and it will take you right to it. Make sure you stay tuned on 98.7 Roar Radio, as we have a full slate of shows coming at you starting bright and early tomorrow with She Means Business. Then my man J-Ray takes you way back in the day. Once again, everybody, thank you for tuning into this week's show. We'll be back at it again next week, same time, same place. So make sure you tell a friend, tell a family member, or tell a frenemy that Eric's on the call. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great weekend. Make good decisions. Watch sports. And as always, have a good one.